I play Miss Auster, who works for the company Nordwind. Currently, I have the start screen in front of me, which says that I must log into the app. Now I log in and am asked at which identity provider I have my web ID. I do have my web ID at Solid Community, which I select. Now I need to provide my web ID as a username. And I add the password. Login. And I'm successfully logged in through my identity provider. You can already see my affiliation, name, and profile picture from my web ID. In the center of the screen, I see core accounting transactions that are stored in the solid pod of Nordwind. Now I would like to have a loan, and the bank requests a cash basis accounting document as a summary of Nordwind's accounting transactions. Therefore, I need to grant access to my tax accountant to create the CBA document. With this button, I do that and insert the web ID of my tax accounting company to give them access. I can also add further accounting transactions. Let's say February started and I want to add the rent for this month. I provide the transaction an ID, and for the date we are in February 2021. Let's say on the 18th. The rent is an expense and it could be 2,000 euros. Finally, I add a description. And the transaction is created. If I reload the page, we see that the data is successfully requested from the solid pod and our new accounting transaction is present. Now we have a look behind the scenes. How are the accounting transactions represented in the container at the solid pod? The data seen here is requested by the app, so the user doesn't have to work with the here seen RDF tuple syntax. We see an accounting transaction container that contains, displayed here, that contains some transactions, and the transactions are also listed below, as seen here. If we click on one, we see it was an expense on a specific date, the paid figure, and the item's name, in this case, the rent for January.
From the tax accountant's perspective, we see last year's summary of the financial situation already displayed here. I am already logged in as an employee of the tax accountant named Peter Amsel. So at the moment, I have no access to the overview of transactions. But just before, I've been granted access. So when we refresh the page, we can see all transactions of Nordwind AG displayed here. So here is also the transaction that has just been created. If I'd like to create a new summary of the financial situation, for example, for last year's January, I can see the calculated sum of income and expenses, as well as the difference. So by pressing a button here, I can create a new summary of the financial situation, and it's displayed here as a new entry. Here we can see the summary of the financial situation that has just been created by the tax accountant. Here we have links to the company of Nordwind AG itself and their transactions, the sum of expenses and the sum of income, as well as the difference and the date. We have to give this entry to the bank so they can process the new summary for the company's loan request. This works by granting an access. And as we can see, we have already granted access to another entry here. To give access to an entry, we just press this button, insert the bank's web ID, confirm, and finally see that this entry can also be accessed now. As a tax accountant, I can also revoke access to this data after the cooperation with the bank ended, so the bank cannot access the summary anymore. Here we can see the authorization that has just been created by the tax accountant as RDF. On the one hand, we have an employees group that may append any data to or read from this authorization. Also, there's a managers group for the tax accountant that has additional rights like controlling the authorization or overriding it. At the bottom is the authorization itself that was just created, where we grant the bank's employees access to the just created summary.
I am an employee of the bank. My name is Amtmann. You can see here that I myself do not have access to the accounting entries, only the tax consultant has. But I can see here the financial documents the tax consultant has given me access to. So here I see the document that I have just been given access to, and I see that Nordwind has made profit in this time period, and thus I can grant the credit to Nordwind. We now have a problem. Amtmann has just been fired by Green Bank. This means that Amtmann should of course not have access to the documents of the tax consultant anymore. The nice thing about Solid now is that it is not up to the tax consultant to always be informed about who is currently working at Green Bank. Instead, the tax consultant has shared his document for the group of all employees of Green Bank, the group we see here, and Green Bank can define who currently is a member of the group all by themselves. We can see that the employees group that has access has those 3 members, among others, Amtmann. So Green Bank can just tell their IT department that Amtmann should not be a member of the employees group anymore. Let's do this quickly. We now can see that Amtmann is not a member of the employees group anymore. This consequently means that Julia Zinze and Daniel Schraudner still have access to the documents that are shared for Green Bank, but Amtmann hasn't. Let's take a look. I am logged in as Amtmann. We can see that, as before, Amtmann does not have access to the transactions. But if we go to the CBAs, Amtmann cannot see the documents anymore, because she's not a member of the employees group anymore.